So we're moving on now to the active citizenship module. What we're going to do in this video is talk through the first 3 sections. There's 6 sections, so this is half of the topic. Okay, so what you're going to be doing is either working by yourselves or in a group. It's probably easier to work in a group because then that's less work for one of you to do, for some of you to do. And also it means that you can get a better range of opinions, there's more discussion, and it'll give you more to write about in your actual exam. Okay, so you are looking at citizenship issues, looking at research skills and develop understanding of methods and processes. If any of you are planning on doing psychology or sociology A-level, you look at research methods then, so this is a good introduction to it. Okay, so it can be on a local issue, so something local to Sedgley, Dudley, Wolverhampton, anywhere like that, even the West Midlands. It can be national for the whole of the UK, or a global issue, or it could be a mixture of them. I can offer you guidance, but I can't tell you what to do. I can't make arrangements for you. That's all up for you to do. Okay, so the 5 stages. First of all, you've got to decide on what your issue is going to be. Second of all, you then do some research. You then plan what you're going to do, take your action, look at the impact of the action, and then evaluate everything. So you've got to understand a range of methods and approaches. You've got to formulate inquiries. You have got to present viewpoints of your own and others, plan practical action, and then critically evaluate it. Okay, so some of the examples of issues you might choose to look at. Lots of people look at homelessness, especially because it's been such a big issue over the past few years with rising use of austerity, rising poverty, and there's been an increased focus on homelessness. Reducing the voting age to 16, something that directly affects you and people that you come into contact with. Changing the content of this year's exams. If this is in a further year, then obviously you might just look at changes to education in general. Mental health, again, another issue that's came up a lot recently. Looking at the income tax boundaries, so making them so they are more staggered instead of that whole 20%, 40%, so that it's more staggered and the kind of lower earners don't pay as much tax. Racism, with the whole Black Lives Matter protests of 2020, that could be an issue that you want to look at. Also LGBTQ plus rights, changes to school curriculums, legalising cannabis, any changes to any laws that you want. You could go global with environmental issues, looking at things like global warming. A really local issue is Save the 7 Cornfields, the fields of back of Sedgley. And something for or against COVID restrictions. You could then relate that to better funding for the NHS and so on. Or it could be more general, changing the electoral system. So now we use first past the post and all the reasons why you might want that changed. Okay, so what you need to do then, you've got to decide on an issue. You then focus it. So your general issue might be voting ages, and you could turn that then into a directed question: should the voting age be lowered to 16? Or you could look at something like homelessness in general and then focus on why is there an increase in homelessness? What can we do to help those people? You then do your research, and that's about ideas and arguments. It's got to be recorded, and then we have to evaluate that research. That bit's key. Plan your action. Everybody needs specific jobs to do, and then you take that action. You then measure the impact. You've got to have a look at what impact you have had in your immediate community, in the wider community, and what you could do to help it affect others as well. And then you evaluate your action. What did each person do? Be honest. Did they actually do their best? Could they have done better? Could your group have done better? Did you have to change your plans? How did you overcome it? That's not a bad thing. You don't get marked down. You also don't get marked down if your action didn't have as much impact as you wanted. It's not about that. It's about the process. So if, say, you wanted to change 50% of people's minds on lowering the voting age to 16, and you only manage 20, you won't get marked down for that. It's the process. Okay, so the first part then, stage 1, deciding on the question or issue. So what you need to do then, you've got a booklet with all the information in about this. You need to have a look at issues you want to look into. In your group, go through each person and each person say what issue they are interested in. You write down why that's a good idea and also why it might be problematic. So, for example, on the board, I've given the example of Josh and Jane. They've said their ideas, they've said why that's a good reason to look into it, but then also what's wrong with it. So, animal rights, for example, yeah, loads of people are going to be interested in that, but is it maybe a bit too, maybe primary school-esque, that kind of thing? Okay. At the bottom of that, you then fill this paragraph in. So overall, what is the issue you've decided to look at? What question or direct targeted issue are you looking at, and why? You can very easily have a 4-mark question on this. So what issue did you choose and why? Why was your issue more important or easier or better to focus on than the other ones? Okay? Right. Press pause and finish that bit. The next bit we're going to do then is your research. Now this sounds easy. It sounds like, yeah, I'm just going to Google homelessness, get a few facts down. And to be fair, to start with, that is the easy bit. But there's different types of research. So secondary research is things like internet websites, maybe newspapers, it could be books, it could be information from an organisation that you have found out about, stuff that you haven't actually had to go out and carry out yourself, okay? Primary research is research you carry out yourself, you do it yourself, okay? For 2021 exams, we're not allowed to carry out much primary research because obviously of keeping social distances. You can do some if you do it via email. So if you want to, for example, find out how many students in year 10 think that you should be able to vote at 16, you can't go around and see them yourselves, but you could email their form tutors, ask their form tutors to ask their classes, and then they provide you with the numbers. That still counts as primary research. Okay. All right. So the other thing that you need to do with your research though is you need to evaluate it. So what I would like you guys to do to start with then is in your booklets you are going to find out 2 sources of secondary research, and you're going to Google whatever your issue is and go to a couple of the websites and write down some facts. So press pause and do that now. Okay, in your booklet you will have seen that you've got the space to write down the findings of your research, and then underneath that it then talks about the validity and the reliability of your research, evaluating your research. If you guys do GCSE history, you'll know that when you look at a source, you look at the provenance of the source, who made it, when was it made, and most importantly, the purpose, why was it made. That's kind of what you have to do with evaluating research. And again, if any of you are doing psychology or sociology A level, then you definitely need to know all this stuff. So basically, what I want you to do now is look at where you got your research from. For example, if you're looking at something to do with maybe racism and you went on to the Show Racism the Red Card website, that would count as a charity website or a pressure group website. If maybe you are looking at something to do with knife crime and you go onto government websites that have got police crimes on statistics on there and all those kind of things, then they're covered in the top 2 as well. It all depends what you go on to. Most things will be either from the government or from charity or pressure group websites. So for example, if you're doing lowering the voting age to 16 and you go onto one of the campaign groups who want it, then that would count as pressure group website. Okay, some of it might not be, some of it might not just be news. So for example, the BBC and what we know from Life in Modern Britain isn't supposed to be biased, so that one could be quite useful. All right. Okay, using this is kind of like a database of how to evaluate your research. So you can use this to fill in your evaluation of your research. Just see which of the options each of your research goes into. So this is for your secondary research. So for example, if you were doing lowering the voting age to 16, you go onto a website that is a group that supports that. You then use the charity websites, pressure group websites, and we look at the reliability. The reliability means if somebody was to do that research again, would they come up with the same results? So is it reliable? Can it be copied? Is it not biased, basically? And if it's statistics that they're showing, statistics usually are quite robust. You don't really lie in statistics. It's kind of facts and figures, isn't it? So that could be a good measure of them. Okay. When we come to the validity, this means, is it valid? Is it true? Or is it kind of opinion? With a charity website or a pressure group website, the validity comes into question, because if it's a pressure group who want the voting age to go down to 16, they're going to really harp on about their point of view. So it might be exaggerated. They might exaggerate certain points to gain sympathy, so you give them money, or to gain supporters. So you do have to be careful. So in conclusion, yeah, their sites are useful, but they can be biased to gain money, which is kind of the whole point of a charity, or if it's a pressure group, to gain followers. Again, if you look at like one of the government websites, yeah, reliable, formal, standardised, it is reliable. They can't really lie on there. They cannot tell you that 27 million people support I don't know, I've said the wrong thing. They cannot tell you that there were 2 million knife crimes in 2019 if there were 500,000. Do you know what I mean? They've got to report the truth, so it's reliable. When is it valid? They might just be using statistics to provide justification for their policy or to gain votes. So they might be leaving certain things out, so you do have to be aware of that. And in conclusion, it's good, but it may be politically biased. So you go through each of those. You should only have 2 pieces of research for secondary. So just literally choose which category it falls into, and you can literally copy out the evaluation. If you're not sure about which of the categories your research goes into, just email me and I'll be able to help you out. Okay? Right. Then what we look at then is the actual results of your research. You may have done some primary research in there as well, which is absolutely fine. And what we're going to do now is look at the results of your research. What has your research actually told you? It doesn't matter if your research goes against your initial ideas. So for example, if you thought that you want to help homeless people because you think 1,000 people in Dudley live on the streets and you want to get them all housed or help feed them, and then you do your research and you find out, oh, there's only about 30, that doesn't matter. It actually gives you more to write about, okay? So you have got a paragraph in your booklets to fill in to tell you what your research actually showed you, to compare it to what you initially thought, and then to say how that's going to help formulate your next ideas. Okay? So I've said, overall, our research showed, and then you give a fact that your research showed. Okay? It also showed, and then another fact. Okay? It then says, however, other research, so maybe you found something that contradicted it. Maybe in your secondary research, you found out that 90% of young people want to vote at 16, but actually when you ask kids in Dormston, only 50% of them did. Okay, it doesn't matter. It gives you more to think about. Okay, so you're just telling me the results of your research in the first bit. It then moves on to, in relation to our question or issue, the research proves or disproves our theory on what we wanted to achieve. So if you wanted to ban zoos because you think that they are unfair on animals, but actually your research has showed that perhaps animals thrive better in zoos and captivity than they do out in the wild, say it. If your research has showed that there are only 30 people who live on the streets in Dudley and you wanted to help 100, say it, that's fine. If you are campaigning to get tax-free sanitary products and then you found that actually that is happening already, that's fine, say it. You can shift your focus onto making free sanitary products like they're doing in Scotland, okay? So actually it doesn't matter if your research goes against what you think, it makes it better, okay? So what you do is you say what your research shown you, how that works in with your initial ideas, and what any changes you have to make. Okay, the only other bit that I want you to look at in this section then, before we move on to the planning, we need to know what citizenship skills you are going to be using. I'm going to give you a list of citizenship skills, and all that you have got to do is say how you're going to be showing them. The first issue, citizenship issue we need to look at, is something called advocacy. Now, they like to ask this as 1-mark questions, but advocacy basically means to support, encourage or promote an idea or an organisation that has got that point of view. So it's basically standing up and talking on behalf of somebody, okay? So it's important to advocate because these charities, these pressure groups, these campaigns need people to speak on their behalf. They need people to reach out to the community. By advocating a cause, you are being an active citizen, which is the whole module. So you volunteer your time to try and make a difference, okay? All right, some more skills then. Questioning, reflecting on ideas and opinions. That's been your research. You might have done some primary research where you've done some questionnaires. You've certainly reflected on your ideas and opinions by evaluating your research in terms of your individual projects, okay? Researching and planning is what we're going to be doing next. By researching the topic and then planning an event. Evaluating ideas and viewpoints, again we've done that in your research, and then presenting convincing arguments to persuade others to support them. That's kind of your action, what you have got to do, trying to get people to agree with you. Okay, there is a 4-mark question then, and it says, where's the actual question? There we go. Summarise. We've lost the 4-mark question. The 4-mark question was about why you decided on your issue. So basically you do a 4-mark question explaining what your issue was that you've chosen, why it's so important and why it was more important than the others. And if you go back to your section 1 notes, you'll be able to answer it. Press pause and then we'll start the 6-mark question. Okay, you should have done your 4-mark question. We're now going to start on the 6-mark one. So it says, summarise the evidence you gathered at the research stage. Evaluate its usefulness in relation to your issue or question. Literally those couple of paragraphs we did before. So summarise your evidence. What did you actually find out from your primary, from your secondary research? What are the facts that you find out? What information did you find out and how useful is it? How reliable is it to you? So again, you look at that table and you say why it's useful. But then also, how did it encourage your action that you're going to take? Did it agree with what you were thinking first, or did it make you understand it slightly differently and you've had to refocus your investigation? So it's literally those couple of paragraphs we did a few seconds ago. Okay, and if you have a look at that then, results of your investigation and so on and so forth, how the evidence relates to the aims of your investigation. So what have you had to change in your investigation based on the research that you've found, okay? And there's the grade descriptors for it. So a comprehensive summary of the evidence. What did you actually find out in detail? How useful it is, and how does it relate to your aims? How does it relate to what you wanted to do? Have you had to change it slightly? Okay, so that's stage 2 done. You should have pressed pause and completed that question. What we're going to do now is planning the action. So this is you actually taking action in your group. Are you going to do a PowerPoint to the class? Are you going to set up a website, email your MP, set up an online petition, maybe rewrite a law or a policy and send it off to your MP. Set up a pressure group. What is going to work for you? So you've also got to make sure what you're doing is okay, so run it by me first, and then make sure everybody in your group knows what they're going to do. There's a backup if things go wrong, and everybody's got at least a couple of jobs. So you also need to make some aims before you do that. You have to have at least 3 clear aims that are measurable. So, for example, it can't just be change people's minds on voting at 16. How many do you want to change? What percentage do you want to change? It can't just be help the homeless. It's got to be something that you can measure. So, for example, I've put 5 separate aims on the screen that are measurable. You are able to measure them. They're obviously all for different things and they're just examples, but you can tweak them to work with yours. Now, because of it being 2021, we're not allowed to do any volunteering work. You're not allowed to do any, going out and helping the homeless. It will all mostly be online. Okay, so please bear that in your aims. And then what you're going to do is you are going to fill in the page, which is your planning. So you've got a chart. You need everybody's name in your group down the side. They need a few tasks each to do. And they need a date when that's going to be completed by. Okay? So everybody in your group needs several little jobs to do, and it can be little things like literally one of you might research a homeless website. One of you might email somebody from a charity. One of you might email some form tutors. One of you might create the PowerPoint. One of you might create a questionnaire. One of you might set up the online petition, and so on and so forth. So all the different jobs need assigning to different people, and you need a completion date by. Okay? So you need to work with the people in your group, get that bit all fully filled in, and then there's another quick question which says explain one feature of the action plan for your investigation. So that would literally just be, if we use the example on there, one feature was that Max in our group was going to call the charity to ask for details on how much money we needed to raise to help with the charity and what that would do. And there's your question finished. Okay, my darling, so that is your first 3 sections all completed. Let me know if you need any help. Thank you.